Fleetwood Mac is one of the rare bands whose story feels almost too dramatic to be real. Breakups inside the band, constant lineup changes, sudden reinventions, and albums that turned private heartbreak into public anthems. Formed in London in 1967, they eventually became a British-American rock institution, selling more than 120 million records worldwide. But their success was never a straight climb. Fleetwood Mac survived by changing shape again and again. They began as a serious blues band, became a transatlantic pop-rock powerhouse, and later turned their own instability into part of their identity. To understand why they lasted, you have to look at more than the hits. Their story is about chemistry, conflict, timing, and the strange way creative tension can become legendary music. The earliest version of Fleetwood Mac was rooted in the British blues boom of the late 1960s. At the center was guitarist Peter Green, a deeply expressive player who had already earned respect among blues fans. The band's name came from drummer Mick Fleetwood and bassist John McVie, the rhythm section that would become its backbone for decades. Alongside Green were guitarists Jeremy Spencer and later Danny Kirwan, creating a lineup far removed from the polished California sound people often associate with Fleetwood Mac today. This was a blues group with grit, atmosphere, and improvisational power. Their early success in Britain proved they were not just another club band. They were serious musicians translating American blues through a distinctly British lens. In 1968, Fleetwood Mac scored a major breakthrough with the instrumental single Albatross, which reached #1 in the United Kingdom. It was unusual, dreamy, slow, and spacious, without a vocal hook or aggressive rock energy. That made its success even more striking. The song showed that Fleetwood Mac could create atmosphere as powerfully as they could play blues. Soon after, they had more UK top 10 hits, including Man of the World, Oh Well, and The Green Manalishi. These songs revealed different sides of the band: melancholy, riff-driven confidence, and darker psychological intensity. Before Stevie Nicks or Lindsey Buckingham ever entered the picture, Fleetwood Mac had already built a respected identity and achieved real commercial success. But the first era of Fleetwood Mac began to unravel quickly. Peter Green left in 1970, followed by Jeremy Spencer and Danny Kirwan over the next couple of years. Losing one major creative figure can damage a band. Fleetwood Mac lost several in succession. These departures forced the group into survival mode. Instead of ending, they evolved. Christine McVie, already connected to the band through her marriage to John McVie, became a crucial member as a singer, songwriter, and keyboardist. Her arrival added warmth, melody, and emotional directness. American singer-guitarist Bob Welch also joined during this transitional period, helping move the band away from strict blues and toward a broader rock sound. This middle period is sometimes overlooked, but it made reinvention possible. By 1974, Fleetwood Mac was at another turning point. The band relocated to the United States, a move that changed not only their geography but their future audience and sound. Bob Welch departed, leaving Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and Christine McVie searching for new creative partners. That search led to Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, a musical and romantic couple with a distinct sound of their own. Buckingham brought sharp guitar arrangements, studio discipline, and restless ambition. Nicks brought a mystical lyrical voice, a unique vocal tone, and a stage presence unlike anyone else in the group. The combination was risky. Fleetwood Mac was not simply adding two musicians, it was merging an existing band with an already intense creative partnership. The first album with the Buckingham-Nicks lineup, simply titled Fleetwood Mac, arrived in 1975 and transformed the band's fortunes in the United States. It topped the Billboard 200, proving that the new version of the group had found a mass audience. The album worked because it balanced 5 distinct personalities. Christine McVie supplied polished, melodic songs with emotional clarity. Lindsey Buckingham added precision and edge. Stevie Nicks introduced poetic storytelling and a sense of mystery. Underneath it all, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie created a steady, understated rhythm section. The band no longer sounded like its British blues origins, but it did not feel artificial. It sounded like reinvention done with purpose, and listeners responded immediately. Then came Rumors in 1977, one of the most famous examples of personal turmoil becoming artistic gold. During the making of the album, relationships within the band were collapsing. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks were breaking up. John and Christine McVie's marriage was ending. Mick Fleetwood was facing his own personal struggles. Instead of hiding that tension, the songs seemed to absorb it. The album's power came from contrast, bright melodies carrying wounded lyrics, polished harmonies wrapped around resentment, longing, and regret. Rumors became one of the best-selling albums of all time and won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1978. Its success turned Fleetwood Mac from major band into cultural phenomenon. What made Rumors endure was not only the drama behind it, but the craft inside it. The album feels intimate and universal at the same time. Listeners did not need to know every personal detail to understand the emotions. The band created songs that sounded clean, accessible, and radio-friendly, yet carried the weight of real conflict. That balance became the Fleetwood Mac signature. They could make pain sound beautiful without softening it completely. Each member's voice mattered: Christine McVie's calm strength, Nick's haunted imagery, Buckingham's nervous intensity, and the rhythm section's patient control. The album's legend can sometimes overshadow the musicianship, but its perfection came from discipline as much as dysfunction. After a success as enormous as Rumors, the safest choice would have been to repeat the formula. Instead, Fleetwood Mac released Tusk in 1979, a more experimental and sprawling album. It challenged expectations and showed Lindsey Buckingham's desire to push beyond polished pop rock. While it did not match Rumors commercially, it has since been recognized as an ambitious statement from a band refusing to become predictable. The group then moved into the 1980s with Mirage in 1982 and Tango in the Night in 1987. These albums kept Fleetwood Mac commercially visible while reflecting changing production styles. The core lineup remained intact through this period, but the internal pressures never truly disappeared. In 1987, Lindsey Buckingham left the band, ending the most famous studio lineup's original run. He was replaced by Billy Burnett and Rick Vito, and this version released Behind the Mask in 1990. The album reached #1 in the United Kingdom, showing that Fleetwood Mac still had a loyal audience, but it was less successful in the United States. The challenge was clear: Fleetwood Mac had always changed, but the Buckingham-Nicks-Christine McVie era had become definitive in the public imagination. Replacing that chemistry was difficult. The band could continue, and did, but listeners often measured every new chapter against the emotional and commercial peak of the late 1970s. The classic lineup reunited briefly in 1993 for the first inauguration of President Bill Clinton, whose campaign had used "Don't Stop" as an optimistic theme. That performance reminded the public how powerful the familiar lineup still was. A full-scale reunion followed in 1997 with The Dance, a live album that became Fleetwood Mac's fourth #1 album in the United States. It marked both the 20th anniversary of Rumors and the band's 30th anniversary, turning nostalgia into renewed momentum. The reunion worked because the songs had aged into shared cultural memory. What had once been raw and personal now belonged to generations of listeners who heard their own lives inside the music. Christine McVie left the band in 1998, a major loss because her songwriting had always provided balance. Without her, Fleetwood, John McVie, Buckingham, and Nicks released Say You Will in 2003, which became the band's final studio album. Christine later rejoined in 2014, restoring part of the classic dynamic. But the band's final years remained complicated. In 2018, Lindsey Buckingham was fired and replaced by Mike Campbell, formerly of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Neil Finn, known for Split Enz and Crowded House. These changes showed that even late in their career, Fleetwood Mac was still shaped by the same forces that had defined them from the beginning: talent, conflict, adaptation, and survival. Fleetwood Mac's legacy is reflected in both sales and honors. They received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1979, were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998, and received the Brit Award for Outstanding Contribution to Music. In 2018, they were named MusiCares Person of the Year by the Recording Academy, recognizing not only artistic achievement but also philanthropy. Yet their real legacy may be harder to measure. They proved that a band could completely reinvent itself and still become more successful than before. They showed that pop accessibility and emotional complexity could coexist. And they turned internal fractures into songs that millions found healing. After Christine McVie's death in 2022, the possibility of Fleetwood Mac continuing became increasingly unlikely. In 2024, Stevie Nicks said she believed the band would not continue. That statement felt like a quiet closing chapter for a group that had survived more endings than most. Fleetwood Mac began as a British blues band and became one of the defining rock acts of the modern era. Their history is messy, but that mess is inseparable from the music. The reason their songs still resonate is that they captured something honest. Love can break down, partnerships can fracture, and people can still create something lasting together. Fleetwood Mac did not succeed despite the chaos. Sometimes, they succeeded because of it. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.